We are living in an era of seismic challenges. Our global food system faces never-before-seen stresses, from the climate crisis, population growth, and fractured supply chains. But might these shocks to our system actually be a catalyst for positive change? This is just so incredible. I'm on a journey to witness for myself. Oh, look at this! How farmers, scientists, and innovators are radically reimagining how we grow our food and produce it. I feel like I'm in a space station and super perfect lettuce has just magically appeared from the heavens. It's a quest to meet the greatest challenges that are facing humanity.
We have to wake up and we have to feed the world. That's a big job.
And create a new and better food future. This episode, our protein planet. It's vital to our diet, but producing protein is one of the greatest environmental challenges.
70% of all the agricultural land in the world, we are using that for animals.
So what can we do differently to meet the protein needs of our rapidly growing global population?
Can we get to 40% of our proteins coming from plants versus so much of it coming from animals?
In a way that's sustainable for our climate.
I truly believe this is the way that farming is going to have to evolve into.
By 2050, our food systems will have to meet the dietary requirements of 10 billion people, many of whom will be significantly wealthier than they are today and aspire to the food choices that are currently really only available to the wealthiest countries on the planet. And for many of us, that means meat. In the past 50 years, production has more than tripled to a staggering 340 million tons. But a rise in the middle classes globally is having a significant effect on our planet. Greenhouse gases emitted by animals in the field, in shipping and processing, and the deforestation of land for grazing and feed means that producing more and more meat to satisfy demand simply isn't a sustainable option. The food system needs to change radically to address these challenges. So I want to find out what innovative sources of protein are being introduced to our diets. In the future, will it be plants that provide the only solution? Or is there a balance to be had? And what can we do as consumers to diversify the foods we get our protein from to help protect the planet? To get some answers, I'm speaking to the head of Future of Protein, Lisa Sweet of the World Economic Forum, who's predicting that it will be impossible to feed our growing population the same amount of protein that we're currently accustomed to in the West. Hey, Lisa.
Hi, James. Nice to see you.
I'm fascinated to find out what kind of future protein production Lisa thinks we face, and whether it will be bold enough to meet the world's increasing demand.
At the World Economic Forum, we've been looking at the context of protein and really trying to unpack and understand what that should look like in the future. Right now, there's a very limited number of protein sources that are consumed by the vast majority of the population around the world. And there is tremendous opportunity to diversify that significantly.
So this isn't necessarily about replacing animal protein in a global sense. It's more about diversifying the different types of protein that are available. So it's a mixture of older techniques and newer ones.
Absolutely. And consumers have a tremendous voice and a tremendous power through market pull. And the more that they ask for more sustainably produced animal-based protein, the more they ask for plant-based proteins that will help to diversify their diet and bring other critical nutrients, the more that market will actually shift and be able to deliver the consumers with the greater access to more sustainable products at the end of the day.
One great example that Lisa's talking about, where diversification has been given the big consumer thumbs up and has exploded in the past decade, is plant-based meat alternatives. It's set to become an $85 billion industry in just 20 years. It's a massive shift in the agricultural model that we're used to, so I am keen to understand what this means to our farmers, our environment, and us as the consumer. This is corn and soy country. In the US, 70% of all soybeans and 36% of all corn goes into feeding animals for livestock production. But in this corner of Illinois, a change is occurring, as demand for the yellow field pea, the key ingredient behind many plant-based meats, has increased dramatically. Nicole Atchison and her company Purist, a pea protein producer, are leading this revolution. Tell me about how your business model works.
So we've started by designing the seeds. So actually the pea seeds that go in the ground, our farmers grow those seeds and then we buy them back and we process them into ingredients. And then we work with food makers and really focus on innovation on how do we use those pieces to build great food, and then hope that the consumers at the store see the benefit. That transformation from pea to food is a lot more efficient than the same transformation of soybeans or corn into an animal feed, animals growing, and then turning that animal into protein.
Is this ever going to replace regular meat?
Yeah, that's the question of the moment. You know, I don't think so. We have a long ways to go to really chip into the meat protein production. And so can we get to a place where 40% of our proteins come in from plants versus so much of it coming from animals? And doing that would allow us to have a sustainable food for a 10 billion population on Earth.
Replacing the burger in our bun with something that looks and tastes just like the real thing may not have much of an impact on the consumer. But with livestock farming contributing 14.5% of global greenhouse gas emissions, it will have a dramatic impact on the planet, all by removing the animal from the equation. But what do the people on the other end of the supply chain think about this change? Good morning, Rick. People like fifth-generation farmer Rick Clark. I hear you're the man that teach me about peas.
Well, we'll see. I hope so, yes.
I can see a lot of corn here. I can see a lot of soy. What I can't see a lot of are peas.
No, we're going to have to get in the truck and we'll take a drive. We'll go see some peas.
On his 7,000-acre farm, Rick not only grows corn, soy, and now peas, he also raises livestock for the meat industry. Tell me about if you feel that there's a conflict between having cattle on land and also growing something that goes into a meat substitute.
I think there's room for everyone at the table. I think we can more than easily get along with the traditional raising of livestock. And I think we also can have a spot for plant-based proteins.
And Rick has found that by incorporating yellow peas into his crop rotation, alongside things like soy and corn, it's having a positive effect on both his land and his bank balance.
Well, this is what it's all about, James. We've taken all the time and the care to get these peas planted, and you have to have a spade with you because a spade is what you can dig up and you can see what is going on down in this soil profile.
So these are really young plants. These are like barely out of the seed.
That's right. And just look at the soil. It just falls apart.
Oh, look at that.
If you were to ask me what drives our farm, it's soil health and it's human health. And those two are connected. When you look at the nutrient density of the food that we currently consume, it's 30% less nutrient dense than it was 25 years ago. Now, that's where the pea comes into play because now the pea is bringing the protein back into the diet which the consumer is demanding to have. So now we've raised the nutritional value of the food up.
So it seems like they could be good for the soil, the farmer's bottom line, and human health. which may be just a few of the reasons why consumption levels of the yellow field pea have doubled from what they were in 2015.
Whoa! This is like the Sahara made out of peas. You've actually got dunes of the stuff.
Yes. The field that we harvested these from made about 40 bushel to the acre. So what we're looking at here is approximately about 20 acres of production.
That's actually surprisingly small.
Yeah.
So these are a good yielding crop to
That's
create
right.
a swimming pool of peas.
Right, that's right.
It's very difficult to find in the real world a situation where you can have your cake and eat it.
Yeah.
What you're describing sounds like growing peas is a have your cake and eat it situation. Is that the case?
I think these can fit into just about anybody's program.
With the global population growing and the demand for meat increasing, including more plant-based alternatives in our diets is going to be vital for protecting our protein planet. But what I want to know is if we can also find ways to farm livestock more sustainably.
Standard grass would have about 15 to 18% sugar, so this is about 5 to 7% higher.
You know, you don't have to eat fish, you just eat like a fish. It's the most sustainable form of food production on the planet.
We're producing and consuming more animal protein than ever before in history, but the amount of land we have to farm on remains the same. With livestock demanding a disproportionate amount of the world's agricultural land to produce a small proportion of protein, our farmers and innovators need to find more sustainable solutions before it's too late.
Well, I want to know if there's something that we could do to help boost protein uptake in both cattle and sheep. So I'm on my way to a really innovative research center that's aiming to do just that.
On this experimental field, seed manufacturer Germinal are hoping the creation of a new grass variety might unlock better protein absorption in livestock, making meat a more sustainable source of protein.
I feel very comfortable amongst grasses being a botanist. What I'm a little bit confused about is what happens when they go inside the animal. Why is it that sheep and cows are so bad at extracting the protein from grasses?
It's not the sheep and the cow per se,
Okay.
It's what's going on in the rumen, and it's the rumen microflora that are trying to capture the protein.
Ruminants is the name given to grazing animals that have a unique digestive system, which allows them to better capture energy and protein from fibrous plants like grass. Inside their stomachs, there are 4 compartments to ferment, store, and regulate the tough grass to then absorb their protein.
What they do when they graze it is they come along and the cow will take a grazing like this. It will wrap its tongue around it,
Yep.
and it will rip it out like that. Then it will chew the cud and it will swallow it. When it hits the rumen, it begins to break down and it decomposes. Protein floods into the rumen microflora try to capture it, turn it into amino acids, which can then be converted into meat and milk. They only capture about a quarter. The rest comes out as ammonia and nitrous oxide, 2 very nasty greenhouse gases.
So does it make a difference what kind of grass you put in?
Oh, yes, it does, a really significant. So what we got here is we've got an Aber high sugar grass. So this grass, we've increased the sugar in this. Standard grass would have about 15 to 18% sugar. So this is about 5 to 7% higher. And what that does, when that grass goes into the rumen, and those cells open up and that protein floods out, at exactly the same time, in synchrony, you get greater levels of sugar, and that feeds those rumen microflora.
So is it a little bit like if you're baking bread at home, if you add a little bit of sugar to the yeast, it helps spark the yeast to life, increasing its biological activity, making them more efficient at creating protein or accessing protein?
Absolutely. And we've done animal studies which will show, on average, we're getting 6% extra higher milk yield from upper high sugar grass and up to 20% daily life weight gain improvement.
So not only do you produce more yield to feed the world, you have better profit for the farmer.
Win-win-win.
Kind of like an implausible win-win.
Yes, I'm sorry, but there it is.
In recent years, the drive for efficiency in meat and dairy has limited the amount of time some farmers have grazed their cows in the field. But could this new grass variety be able to turn the tide? To find out how effective it's been, I'm meeting dairy farmer Rob Taverner.
How does it work in practice for you? It's great to see cows actually eating it.
for cows to produce lots of good quality milk, we need them to eat lots of good quality grass, and that's what a new reseed of the high sugar grasses does. And the more they eat, the more they produce in terms of milk, and that goes right through to the butterfat they produce and the protein. So we get a really good quality milk.
So not only are you getting higher yields, you're also getting better quality. So you've kind of got two in one at the same time. Scientific solutions like this have saved farming in the past, allowing us to meet rising demand for food. But now they need to go further. They need to not only feed the world, they need to protect the environment at the same time. Because it's not just meat and dairy that has an impact. All animal agriculture comes at a cost. At Kipster Farm in the Netherlands, Ruud Zanders has devised an ingenious solution to tackling the environmental damage done by another one of our dietary protein staples: eggs.
The first thing we have to do is, and maybe that's a little bit strange for a poultry farmer to say, but eat less animal-based products, so eat also less eggs. And we have to look, are we producing all animal-based products? Can we produce eggs in a more sustainable way?
Annually, we produce over 75 million tons of them. But for each dozen laid, 2.7 kilograms of CO2 is released into the atmosphere.
The most important part, and that's with all animal-based products, if you look to the carbon footprint, is the feed of these animals. Traditional feed of chickens is a lot of corn and a lot of grains. I think that is the biggest problem, because 70% of all the agricultural land in the world, we are using that for animals.
However, Ruud has discovered an ingenious solution to this problem, and in doing so, claims to have created the world's first climate-neutral egg.
What we are doing is making a feed with 100% waste products, so only waste products. What you see is popcorn, it's waffles, it's bread, pasta, biscuits, rice waffles. Some people think, yeah, but they need corn or they need grains. That's true, the chickens need that, but all these products you see here, it is grain or it is corn.
To feed all 20,000 chickens, Kipster Farm is repurposing 1,000 tons of human-grade quality food annually that would otherwise end up as waste.
So this, what you see here, is a big step in making a climate-neutral egg.
With the recycled feed reducing an egg's carbon footprint by 70%, the rest of the reductions come from their use of solar energy and by farming only smaller and lighter hens that require less feed. The final step in reaching the all-important carbon zero milestone is packaging, also produced from waste.
This box is made from potato starch, and that's a waste product of the production of potatoes. And that's a very low carbon footprint.
Reducing the environmental impact of meat and eggs should allow us to continue to consume these vital protein sources into the future. But does it mean we should be producing more of them? With roughly half the planet's habitable land already taken up for agriculture, we simply just don't have the space to continue to increase production at the rate it's going. And if that's the case, where else will our protein come from? I've been talking to Lisa Sweet, head of Future of Protein at the World Economic Forum, finding out what other opportunities there are out there. So in the West, when we talk about animal protein, we tend to think about land animals. Our mind instantly goes there. But in many cultures around the world, it's really aquatic animals that are the key source of protein. How does aquaculture fit into all of this?
Aquaculture is huge and it has tremendous potential. I'm really glad that you asked that, because people do tend to think about beef, chicken, pork as the main sources of animals, but fish and blue food, as we often call it here, is really a tremendous source of not only protein, but a whole suite of nutrients that are really beneficial to health and development. And so I think the focus on aquaculture is going to be increasing. So I think one thing that's really exciting about aquaculture and about blue food in general is the number of species that are out there that are not tapped into that can bring greater diversity.
If you ask the ocean, what does it make sense to grow? Like, what's unique about it as an agricultural space? What it says is, why don't you grow things that don't swim away and you don't have to feed?
On his underwater farm, Bren Smith is sustainably producing high-protein seaweed and seafood that requires zero inputs.
There are hundreds of kinds of shellfish. There are thousands of different sea vegetables you could grow underwater, and this is really nutritious food. I mean, we say, you don't have to eat fish, you just eat like a fish.
By utilizing a simple underwater rope and scaffold structure, Bren and his team are farming high-protein seaweed, oysters, mussels, and scallops without the challenges faced by their counterparts on land.
We found kelp.
It's the most sustainable form of food production on the planet because it doesn't take any water, fertilizer, feed to grow our crops. And that's so important because as on land, prices for fertilizer and water and land go up, the price of our crops are going to stay stable, which moves it to the center of the plate. Looks nice, huh?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And with more than 70% of the Earth's surface covered by oceans, the potential to source more of our protein from them is vast.
If you were to take less than 5% of US waters, according to the World Bank, you could create the protein equivalent of 3 trillion cheeseburgers. I mean, that is a lot of food in a small area.
Protein is an essential part of the human diet, but our future relationship with it is going to have to evolve. And that's because our current methods of producing protein just really aren't sustainable, particularly in the face of growing populations. But the good news is, novel techniques for producing protein don't have to come at the expense of the environment, our taste buds, or farmers.